It's Ash from Super Videos back for another video for Season 9 of The Walking Dead. Recently, in the last couple weeks, we've been getting some very exciting news for casting for Season 9 regarding three very popular characters from the comic book who are going to be part of the next group of villains we're going to see, the Whispers. So we have casting for Alpha, Beta, and Lydia. Starting with Alpha, Samantha Morton has been cast to play Alpha. For Beta, we have Ryan Hurst. And for Lydia, we have a young actress named Cassady McClincy. One thing I want to mention right off the bat is given this casting news came out a couple weeks ago, and they usually announce these things when they happen right away, it's likely that the Whispers, or specifically Alpha, Beta, and Lydia, will not appear until later on in the season. Most likely in the second half of the season. And putting that with the fact that it's been kind of revealed, if it's true, that Rick Grimes will only appear in 6 or 7 episodes, that means that Rick Grimes is going to only be in the first half. And then if the Whispers, particularly Alpha, Beta, and Lydia, are going to be coming up in the second half, it's very likely that Rick will not be interacting with any of these characters. He might have a few scenes, or he might be connected to the Whispers story arc, but he's not going to be connected to the characters that we have, Alpha, Beta, and Lydia. This means that they're going to have to basically remix a huge chunk of the comic storyline in order to make this work. Because, of course, Rick has some very important scenes or moments with Alpha that are going to be missing. And although there isn't that many scenes between Rick and Beta and Rick and Lydia, Rick's storyline is still very much connected with them, even though they may not necessarily have a lot of scenes together in the comics, or they don't appear a lot together in the comic book. Now, with that out of the way, let's start with Samantha Morton, who will be playing Alpha. Now, I definitely recognize the actress, but I don't know where I know her from. She has a very familiar face, but I don't know exactly which show or movie I've seen her in. But one of the most prominent things that she's appeared in is Minority Report. I've seen that movie, I don't remember her in it. But, like I said, I remember the actress from something. Can't quite put my finger on it. Anyway, what I want to get at is that she's a very big actress. So this is a big casting. What does that mean? That means that there's a possibility that they will be remixing Alpha's story and giving her more time and more story than they did in the comics. Of course, in the comics, her storyline was pretty much short-lived. But I think because this is such a big casting, they're going to expand on Alpha's storyline just a tiny bit. They're not going to change it significantly. They're still going to have that kind of big moment with her and Negan. The other thing, if we pretend Samantha Morton is bald, and I do believe there has been some roles she's been in where she is bald, she definitely does look like Alpha, and the resemblance is there. So that's definitely a positive thing. Going into Beta, Ryan Hurst has been cast to play Beta. Now, for Ryan Hurst, I don't remember seeing him in anything, but he's been in Sons of Anarchy. He was in Saving Private Ryan, and he's been in Remember the Titans. Very good casting, I think. Not only does Ryan Hurst look like Beta, he is extremely big. He is very tall. And just going with the intimidating factor of Beta in the comics, it's a great casting in that regard. And just to compare how tall he is compared to Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who plays Negan, he is about 1.93 meters. And if we look at Jeffrey Dean Morgan, he is 1.88 meters. Maybe not that much taller, but maybe taller enough for us to see the difference between the two in terms of size. So in that regard, also very good casting. He's not only big, he's intimidating, he's tall, he looks like Beta as well. And much like Alpha, what I said, this is an extremely big casting. So that means that they're most likely going to remix his story and give him more time. Even though Beta appears for much longer amount of time and has a bigger role than Alpha in the comics, he still doesn't have an extremely big role in the comics. For as big of a villain as he was set out to be. But I think, like I said, because this is such a big casting, they might remix that and give him a much bigger storyline. But going back to what I was saying about Negan and Beta, definitely very excited to see the dynamic between Beta and Negan in the TV show and what they're gonna do with those two characters. Of course, comic readers know there is a pretty exciting scene, moment, and entire storyline, I would say. Small storyline, but still a storyline between Negan and Beta. And I'm definitely very excited to see that play out in the TV show. But the last thing that I want to mention about Beta is that there's something very interesting that they're doing. If you go back to the trailer and watch the trailer, there is a scene where Daryl has two extremely big knives and he's killing walkers. Comic readers recognize those knives. Those knives are somewhat exact replicas of the knives Beta uses in the comics. And then I was thinking, what if they do something very interesting where Beta comes up, he's the big bad, and Daryl, thinking that he is the guy, nothing can stop him, attacks Beta, much like he attacked Negan when he first got introduced and beat Abraham to death. If you remember that, he punched Negan in the face. What if Daryl attempts to do a similar thing? And then Beta, being as big of a guy he is and as intimidating as he is, puts Daryl down right away. Maybe beats him up a little bit. And then that's the end of that. He doesn't die or anything, but he just shuts him down. And then what if he takes the knives that Daryl has and uses that as his own signature weapon? That would be extremely exciting and interesting in my opinion. And I do think that if they do it right, it would be very epic in terms of the showdown between Beta and Daryl. It's not really a showdown. Beta and Negan would be more of a showdown. But what I mean is just the whole thing playing out if they decide to do something like that. Moving into Lydia. Cassady McClincy is the young actress that's been cast to play Lydia. I don't recognize her from anything. One of the main things she's in is Castle Rock, which is a TV show. I haven't watched that, but one thing that kind of pops out is that she looks like Lydia. Much like Ryan Hurst looks like Beta, Samantha Morton looks like Alpha, Cassady McClincy looks like Lydia. So in that regard, extremely good casting. They look alike, which is great. Now, the other thing, which is extremely interesting and cool, is that Samantha Morton actually looks like Cassady McClincy. That's very interesting. The daughter-mother thing works because they look alike. That's very interesting. I don't think that's very common in shows, movies, or anything. I don't think that's common, and I don't think it's easy to do. To find two actresses that potentially fit the role and also look alike and are supposed to be mother-daughter in the story that they're telling. So extremely cool and extremely interesting. And then moving forward to the other part that's very, very interesting is that this casting basically verifies that they're going to remix Carl's story in a major, major way. Before this, I didn't even think Lydia was going to be coming up because Carl was dead. I didn't think it was going to work for them to bring Lydia in. But there are some ways in which this could work. And I don't think that it's Henry. I know that there's been a lot of thought about Henry potentially replacing Carl's storyline from the comics in terms of his story in the Whisper's story arc. I don't think that's going to happen, mainly because if you look at how old Cassady McClincy is and how old Lydia will potentially be, it's around 16, 17. Look at Henry. He's extremely young, much younger than Lydia. And I don't think that it would work. I don't think that, that the relationship between those two characters would work in the TV show. So I don't think it's going to work that way. But the other thing I was thinking is they could potentially bring Enid in at this point. She is a developed character, so they could basically bring that aspect in because it's a developed character. We have a bond with the character, and they could potentially remix it, gender swap. Carl could be replaced by Enid, and Enid could go with Lydia, which means that they're going to remix the story where Lydia stays the same, but Carl is going to become Enid. And Enid will get into some sort of relationship with Lydia. And that's basically it. That's all I wanted to talk about. This is an extremely long video, but I wanted to put all of these together and then talk about it instead of talking about them individually. And that's exactly why I waited so that we have all of this together and then do my video instead of just doing my video after each announcement came out. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video. If you like what you see, press like, subscribe for more content, and press the bell button to receive notifications for future uploads. Like the Facebook page of this channel to join our Walking Dead community. Join us live every Friday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time for a Q&A session. See you all there.